G'day and welcome back to my channel. Now look, a big shout out to my Patrons and YouTube members, because without them I just wouldn't be able to keep doing this modelling for you. I'd have to go out and get a real job, you know, so I wouldn't be making these videos. And you can also, these days, buy me a curry. It's a new thing. Have a look at the link. Yes, you could just sort of slip in there and buy me a curry. You don't have to sign up and join, like, you know, month by month with YouTube or Patreon. It's just, yep, quick curry, I'm happy. Now, I have got quite a bit done on the Warspite, as you can see. I've worked on the plimsoll line. I've got the hull red done. Red and I are just not good friends. They really aren't. There were lots of problems. There was a big gaff, which I'll explain to you, and there's still lots to do, I know. But I'll have a whole video of me messing about, making mistakes, and then figuring out ways to correct them. So I hope that'll be of interest to you, and you can see that I'm just a modeler like anybody else. But things go terribly wrong for me as well. But the thing is, how do you get out of it? How do you fix it? How do you move on? That's what I'll show you in this video. All right, roll the music. So this is where I got to last time, and we had this whole thing assembled and primed. Well, dry fit, really. The only thing that's assembled is the lower hull. That's all been set up, the guns are done, that sort of thing. I've joined all those little pieces together. A lot of putty, a lot of filling, a lot of mucking around. If you haven't seen that, then please go back and look at the previous video. So, with this off, this was just put together so you could see how it was looking. Rubber bands, it's pretty well what I'm going to need to do at the end of this video actually, so we came in as we went out. Now, with all that out of the way, next I'm going to need to pull off those pedestals. And they screw out nicely, no problem at all. It's the whole reason I made sure those nuts were in there with PVA white wood glue, so that whole thing would come apart. One of the problems with this kit, with these prop shafts, I made them level, but the actual Airfix kits go up at a bit of an angle. It's they look pretty ridiculous, like a bloody tripod. So I'd lowered those, but then that creates another problem, because now the screw props, well, look, they just won't go on. There's not enough space. And it's the same here at the back. They won't go on there either. So it doesn't matter what you do, you're kind of stuck. But luckily, there's another mistake by Airfix that is going to let me solve this problem. The eagle-eyed viewers will notice the left prop actually is sitting okay. That prop screw, see? That one's sitting all right. The reason is I've made a little extender, see? And this is actually correct for the ship. There should have been one on this side and one on the other side. So really, the props were, the prop screws were too close. So here's how I went about fixing that. First, I'm going to have to do a bit of surgery. So there's a little piece here that I don't need, which is the little stick out bit that they had, Airfix had, for putting the prop screw on. So it's just a matter of cutting that away. Try not to wreck everything, Harry. Okay, that's away, and then giving that a little bit of a trim so we have a nice flat surface there to make my extension on. So that won't take long. I've already gone to the trouble of making up the little part that I need, which is just attaching a tube to the current screw that's in the kit. And then it's just a matter of a bit of slow drying cement here. I like this stuff because the contactor, because it gives me a bit of wriggle room. Like, I put it on and I can sort of fiddle with a bit. And it also is good for welding together surfaces. If you've got two flat surfaces, it'll really weld them. So there we go. That fits onto there and solves that whole problem. Now the next thing that I want to tackle are the rudders. Now I didn't put all of these on before when I was priming and checking the hull, because they're the sort of thing that I knock off. So they have been left to the end here where I have to put the red colour on. And you'll notice these rudders have got a terrible injection mark there. It's really horrible. Now you could try and fill it, and then you could try to sand it, but the things usually don't sort of work. But they're kind of thick anyway, these rudders, so it's a very simple matter of using the blade to scrape it down and basically thin the whole rudder. It's going to make it more accurate anyway, as accurate as an Airfix kit's going to be at this scale. But that will easily remove that, and it's only taken me, well, speed up version here, hasn't taken me long at all, has it? Once that's done, a little bit of file, okay, get it nice and smooth, and then there's a little bit of excess there which I couldn't get out when I was scraping, which is just like the heel of it. So I'll just trim that out with a knife. As you can see, not hard, and look at the finished result. That's perfectly smooth on that side, and it's perfectly smooth on that side. You couldn't even tell the difference. Now I had to fill in the old holes there because obviously they were too far back and they were going to foul with the props, right? Prop screws. Because we basically put those extenders on, that means everything's going, further to the back. So we need holes that are going to be further to the back. These little rudder things, they're going to have to go about there. So I've eyeballed that, I roughly know where it is. Now I just need to get them level. I've also checked this out against the drawing so I know that actually is the correct position. In fact, all these changes I've made has only made the whole thing so much more accurate. The rudders were further aft and all the prop shafts had that little extension piece. If you want to know the length of that little extension piece, it is the same as the front bit of it. Well, yeah, the bit towards the front. You'll see there's a bracket, like there's the triangle shape bracket. Well, to the front of that is a little collar that goes around the shaft, and you just make one identical length, and that's it. That's how it was. So it's a simple matter here of basically I've marked out, made sure I've got alignment to the props, and now I pin vise out those holes. Now these are just starter holes, so this is the thing, if I make a little error here I can sort of correct it on the run, but I think I've got those two pretty level. Yep, they look okay, they're pretty level and they're lined up with the shafts because that's basically it. Now we go to a slightly larger drill bit. This is probably about a 2mm. I know I'm going to need a bit more than that to get those bottom pieces of the rudders in, but this is just a starter, right? This is just the starter things. So yep, it's only 1.7, so there you go. It's not enough. But the actual bottom little piece here, when I measure that, I need about 2.2. And that just happens to be, when I check my round file, about near the top there. Yep, 2.3, 2.2. Okay, so I know I need to go about halfway along. Yep. So all I've got to do now is file these out until my round file is halfway through. So that's just a nice little leisurely job, put some music on, sit back, relax, a little bit of filing. I don't know why people don't enjoy it. I do. I zen right out. And there you go. And once that's done, we can now add our rudders. And they should fit in, look at that, they even friction fit. Nice and tight. Now it's just a matter of gluing those in. I've already got the one on the far side in. I'll just get a little more sort of glue around things to weld it in nicely. Because, rudders are a thing I will break. I will knock them. I will touch them. I can't help myself. I'm attracted to rudders. So in they go. Oh, come on, Harry. A bit fumbly there, mate. You're supposed to look professional. Yeah. See, even I don't get it right first time. There you go. Rudder is in. That's that whole assembly now, scratch fixed. And I think that looks a hell of a lot better. Oh, just a tiny bit of adjusting there. Bugger it up, mate. No, think you got it. There we go. That is it. Those are the fixes. Coat of primer, and that's all come up rather good. It just looks like it should do. And a little bit underneath anyway, like you'll hardly see it. But at least I know it's done right now. Okay, what I need to do now is do the plimsoll. To that, I need to get this ship very level. So that's my stand, but I'm not going to put the pedestals, right? Those brass pedestals. No, I don't need them. Instead, the screws that actually go to the bottom of the brass pedestal, they will also fit through and into those nuts in the hull. So I can use this whole thing to actually create a very firm base that I'll be able to level the ship on. And you need that because if you're going to draw a plimsoll line, there's various ways to do it, but with my method and most of the methods, you're going to have the ship sitting level. Now, sometimes you can flip it upside down like it is now, but if you've got an upswept bow, which this might just have that, it slightly does, or if you've got basically a lower area at the aft, which this one does, very hard to get the thing level, but the keel is level, the bottom. So putting the base on like that, that's given. Now, I'm going to use this Molotov 10. Haven't done this before. There's a bit of an experiment, and we'll see how it turns out. But that pen I should be able to use at the correct height. I just had to find a block of wood, the right height, that would get me just to there on the side of the hull. So once I figured that out and I was ready to go, it's a simple matter to start marking. It takes a steady hand. Although you can correct it, because it took me 2 or 3 goes until I really got this down right. I found the best thing was actually keep the pen still. Keep it locked there against the block of wood and slide the hull against it. And this gave you your cleanest line. So there we go. That line's not bad, not bad. I will be masking that and then painting below and above it, and that will straighten the whole thing out. Now we are ready to do some masking. So I'm going to use some thin Tamiya tape to start with because it'll allow me to stretch it around the curves. Because the thing is, although my plimsoll line is level from the side, the curve of the hull, it goes inward and it curves around. It's bending in a couple of axes. So the thinner the tape you've got, the more likely that you're going to be able to stretch it and bend it. Wide tape won't bend. Now I'm just getting it to the very edge of the paint pen. So that's a bit where the fairies will be, and you know, basically it won't matter if that gets overdone. We can come back later. The thing is, once this is all painted up, you can use the same technique later and remark the line. For the moment, this is just a method of masking. Ideally, you probably should do this with pencil and do it that way to start with, as a sort of, you'll see why. There's a bit of a problem later on, but either way, you either mark it with a pencil or mark it as I've done with a Posca pen and get your line. That will give you a level plimsoll. Now, to make sure we don't get any bleed, I'm using cotton bud here, or some people call them Q-tips, to basically burnish along the edge there. Get it as firm as I can so that paint won't get underneath there. And it didn't. It didn't get underneath there. That wasn't my problem. There's another problem to come. You'll see. And don't bang those prop shafts, Harry. You got to watch your fingers. This is why I don't like putting those things on to the absolute last minute, because, you know, and if I put anything on like aerials or, you know, any sticky out bits of guns, I'm always going to bump them. Anyhow, there we go. That's it. Next, I will need to mask the top. Now I probably really should have used some paper here to protect the hull, but oh well. I used the painter's tape because that was quick and easy, and I haven't really had too many problems with painter's tape lifting in the past, but I did this time. Anyhow, doesn't matter, that gets fixed up later, we don't worry about that. But the whole idea here is that just then becomes what I use to do the top. Now, to get around that little funny bit, I just simply score the blade either side of that little sort of sticky out thing. This happens on ships. They have these little sort of pieces that you have to work around with your masking. So there we go, all done. Now on with the painting. I'm going to use my cordless little compressor here, and I've got my clips screwed onto it, and that works really well, gives me just the pressure I need. I'll be using some Life Colour acrylic thinner and Life Colour paints, and I find usually 1:1 of the thinner to the paint, but I'm going to be mixing couple of colours here, so just watch. First, I'll put in 2 measures of the thinner, and that normally gives you a really nice thin coat that goes down well. It dries fairly quickly, flows nicely. Here we go. We're going to use Life Colour Red. Now, red is the bane of my existence. Red always goes wrong. We'll talk about that later. But here with the red, and I only ever stir them with a toothpick because I found shaking them, you get paint all in the thread and it buggers up the jar sealing, then they dry out. So word of warning if you've got that. I'm going to use a strainer because you never know here with our Australian heat and weather if there's going to be some blobs in the paint. And I'd had such problems with Life Colour before of little blobs and snakes jamming out my airbrush. But using the sieve, it's just a cocktail sieve, and it cost me like a shekel on bloody Amazon or something, okay? It makes sure no scary little monsters end up with the paint. Now I've also got here, this is German oxide, okay? So it's just an oxide colour. And I'm putting in 1 measurement each of those. So that'll give me, in total, 2 measurements of paint, and I've put in 2 measurements of thinner. That should give me the right consistency, or put your teeth in, Harriet, any. That'll give me the right consistency, there we go, it's getting late in the day, of mix that'll work really well in my airbrush with my compressor on this day. The way I hold my nose, look, you know, everybody's different. This works for me. It might not work for you, but it was a tip that I got from another fella, and it seems to do the trick. All right, with that all in there, mix it all up in the cup, and we are ready to paint. And here we are, it's the next day, and look, it's lovely and red, and you know, it's all nice, yes. There's a bit of a problem. This is my second respray, and let me explain why. I mean, it looks all very nice and good here, and it is, and there wasn't any bleed of the red underneath the masking. But what happened was, and here's some pictures, the Molotov pen, although I had sprayed over it with grey Styrene when I was doing my testing, and when I'd made mistakes I just simply resprayed the grey. This time when I had marked that out with that Tamiya tape, right, when I sprayed over it was with thinned down life colour, and that thinner reactivated, and there you can see it now, had reactivated that tiny little edge of the Molotov black, and then that had dripped down all the way through. Now the result is I don't really have any red spill, none at all. I didn't have to remask or anything. This is the original masking. So that was a mess, and I left it overnight to fully dry, and the beautiful part about life colour paints is it levels out perfectly. So everything smoothed out, it didn't require any sanding, but what I did then was I got out my Styrene orange. It's sort of a, they call it a red oxide, but it's really an orange. And I've used that before when I'm doing red holes. And I thought that should not reactivate the Molotov pen, because I know that because I'd sprayed grey Styrene over the hull sides while I was testing with the pen, not happy with what I was doing, respraying it and so on. So now feeling fairly confident that Styrene was down, allowed an hour or so for it to dry, that's all it takes, it all looked good, there was no bleed through at all of that Molotov pen, and I mixed up another life colour mix of the whole red, and this time I used same, half red, half oxide, but I only put a little bit of thinner in. This meant I got a little bit of tip dry as I was spraying, because it was it wasn't a very thin solution, but it allowed me to get it down and hopefully there's no bleed. I was getting paranoid by this stage. Anyhow, that went down quite well and I got the colour that I wanted, and here it is now. I've peeled it all off and it's come up a treat. Now notice I've actually put the screws there inside the hull, which stops you getting paint on the thread. So you can see here my brass pedestals, they screw in perfectly, because while I was painting that hull I haven't filled the thread in, sort of, you know, while I'm basically spraying over the top. So that's the trick, and it's the reason, one of the reasons I leave the deck off, is I can get into the inside of the hull, reverse put the screws, and that blocks any paint getting on the thread. So look, there it is, and that is how it sort of ended up. Now it's not bad. There are a few paint lifts. Yeah, that blue painter's tape has lifted here and there, so a bit annoyed about that. But overall, look, I'm pretty happy with the look. And as you can see, at least as far as, well, some areas the Molotov has completely disappeared, as you can see here. But there are other areas where it looks really good, such as in the bow here on the starboard side. It didn't really bleed there, so that looks nice and straight. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, one of the annoying things with this kit, this battleship, is these guns here, these secondary ones, right? They're sandwiched between the deck and the hull. And so the thing is, if you put the deck on now and paint everything, which is kind of what you normally would do, well, then you've got these guns stuck in there. They're going to get too much paint on them, get all gunked up, because, they need to rotate, which I didn't want. So that's one of my reasons why I've separated it and done it this way. Okay, having said that, what we need to do now is get on with actually gluing that deck to the hull. So here we go. This is it. Let's go out with a toe tapping music as I finally glue that deck in position. So this is where we're going to leave the Warspite this time. It's not as far as I'd hoped to go. I'd hoped that I would have got the whole of the upper side here filled, puttied, painted, and then we would have started on the camo. So that would lead me into doing the wood deck next time. But I will get at least this all puttied up, and I will get the primer on. And in the next video, I'll show you as I start to mark out the camo scheme, which will also go up onto the superstructure. And then we'll try and get the wood deck on. So that'll be good. This time it was a case of, well, live and learn. I lost a day or so of build time because I had to redo the lower hull. But it's come out a lot better, and I think actually having that sort of orangey colour primer, they call it oxide red, but it's really an orange, it's given a really good foundation to my hull red that I put over the top, and the paint has a really, really good depth to it. So that's, you know, kind of worked out. So there you go. All right, well, I learned a lot. I learned if you're going to put Posca pens down, or in this case Molotov pens down, seal them in with, and if you're masking, seal them in with a bit of Styrene. Otherwise, acrylic thinners, the ones for my water-based life colour anyway, they will melt and dissolve your paint pen. So, all right, lesson learned, because I'd never actually done it this way before. So there you go. So I won't be putting on any more pen work until I've painted all the upper hull and the camouflage, and then I will basically seal all that with a flat coat. Then I'll run my pen along finally to get my Blimser line. That's the plan. That should work. And now I know how to rub it off if I make a mistake, don't I? Because I know how that stuff is now fairly easy to dissolve. So there you go. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed it so far. It was more a case of, you know, a bit of scratch work and some guff ups on painting. But there you go. That's where I'm up to on the Warspite. More to come next time. So look, if you like this video, hit that like button. You can make a comment, just be nice about it, okay? You can subscribe to the channel, that's always really good, and hit that ding bell notification. If you really would like to see this idiot make more mistakes, hit the super thanks. I'll try and gaff something else up for you. It's not that hard, because like you and like all of us, there are times where total failures. But the trick is, I think, to come back for them. And again, big thank you to my patrons and my YouTube members. And don't forget, you can buy me a curry now as well. Links for that were at the beginning of the video and in the description. So that's it for now. It's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Area Denny.